Hey, and welcome to another episode of Making the Right Play. I'm your host Ishi with my co-host.
Manit.
Today we have two special guests on the show, Navidu and Moneli. How are you guys doing?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. How are you?
Good to hear. Not bad, not bad. Great to have you guys on the show. So Navidu, I've known you for a long time. So we have history that goes way back, and well, quite a while back. And I first met you when I started like getting into MUN in at Gateway, right? And you were like a mentor to me because I was in your comp. That was my first conference, and you've gone on to make big moves since you graduated from Imperial and you did your masters at Zurich. And now you're a consultant at Deloitte. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So as you can see, Navin is a very impressive person, and we want to have him on the show. And Manit will tell you why Manali is as impressive.
Yeah.
For the record, I'm not that old.
He's a lot old. He's a little bit older than me.
Yeah. So Moneli, I met Moneli, I think mostly through mutual friends when I was back in high school, because I was completely outside that entire circuit. I think I met like Isuru, and then like one thing led to the other. So I believe Moneli, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm butchering anything, but like Moneli is a economics and business student at UCL. And fun fact, I actually applied to that program when I got in, and like I could have been in the same program, but like I decided to come to the north. But yeah, that's a conversation the both of us have had, and I think I share very very interesting conversations with Moneli most of the time. And we like I think when university gets tough, like Moneli is very very much like a go-to person for me. I think, and she does like a lot of fun stuff even in Sri Lanka. She's a founder of Light LK, so that's a community project that's focused on like mental health, and she has like multiple interests, and I feel like I don't know the entire story, and I want to know through the entire podcast too. And I think that she's definitely like a very impressive person to talk to. Yeah.
Cool.
We are definitely hiring the two of you to do eulogies and after you guys.
I don't.
Feelings and personal statements, but okay.
Yeah, you'll just have like hype men at your funerals. I don't know if you want that. But yeah. Anyway, so both of you were students in London. Like, how is that whole thing like? I mean, I can imagine. Like I live. Well, when I was at college, I lived pretty close to San Francisco and kind of a big city. But like, I was like, I wasn't in the heart of it. Like, LSE or Imperial, right? So how is that experience as a whole, really?
All right, I'll go first. Yeah, really good, really good. So in terms of living and so on, you mentioned generally in the UK, the first year you're definitely in student halls, which is great. My hall was literally just across the road from uni, so I actually did wake up 5 minutes before an exam once and still managed to, surprisingly make it on time. Um, London's a very vibrant, diverse city, right? So uh, you wouldn't hear the same accent or see someone who looks just like the person you saw 5 minutes ago. Uh,
Mm.
Any day you'd see and hear people from all sorts of places, which is great. So there's plenty of kind of neurodiversity, a lot of different thoughts out there, and the city is active 24/7. So it's a really good student experience. Um, Moving on second, third, fourth, and fourth years, you then kind of grow out of that bubble, find your own flatmates, live alone, and so on. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. You get to try something different. Maybe a bit different when you go out of London, because there's obviously more space and things cost less and so on outside of London. But as far as London goes, yeah. Plus, the benefit is, the legal age is 18, so we don't have the restrictions you guys have.
Well, legal
Oh,
age is 18. It's 19 in
18 here.
Canada, right? Oh, it's 18 in
It's
Quebec.
18 in Montreal. Like,
Yeah.
so many people come here because of that. Like, I've heard at least 15 people coming here because the legal age is 18. So that was very inspiring.
Not that either of us make use of it.
Yeah, I haven't made use of many laws in Canada, but yeah.
We both are unstarted. We were both underage
Underage,
anyway.
yeah.
So,
Oh yeah. Both of you are 17, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's like weird, like because like I don't know. I feel like maybe this is just Stanford, but like in the U.S. it's more of a trend to like stay on campus. like especially if you're an international student, right? Because
Mm.
I don't know, if I try to live in like Palo Alto, like the cost of living is just insane, and like I'd imagine like the cost of living is pretty high in London as well, right? Like how do you manage to offset that as like a student?
So typically in second year, you often, flat share with two, three other people.
Mm.
So naturally your rent is split among three, four other people.
Right, right.
Um, London itself is very expensive, but I think it also comes with, forcing yourself to be a bit more independent. Even just, flat hunting itself, you learn so much about the
Yeah,
property industry, communicating with agents, just really forces you out of that, student bubble into a progressive adult. So that's something that I really enjoyed in my second year, despite it being a bit of a hassle. What
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
you?
yeah. And in terms of finances and so on, a lot of people, by the time they get accustomed to the whole university way of working, being independent, taking charge of your own studies and so on, you also end up, doing a lot of, uh, some people do internships. Uh, you generally in London, internships are always paid, which is I think a good thing because
yep,
it makes
100%.
it shows
Yeah.
people do actually take it seriously and also get something out of it.
Mhm.
It's not just an opportunity for people who are already well off to kind of do work and so on.
Yeah.
You have plenty of opportunities within university as well. So in my case, for instance, I remember in second year, you're generally considered not experienced enough for a proper job,
Yeah.
but also you don't want to kind of you know do something too odd or too irrelevant to kind of your goals. So we did summer research programs and so on within the university. So you have your bursary and so on. So there is that as well. Uh, yeah, pretty much. Does that answer?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
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 I think that makes a lot of sense. And on mine, so uh, both of you have like different, like your chose like different streams in terms like I believe Namitu you did biomedical engineering.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Molly is going down like the business econ route. So like how were like the programs like on an academic level, and like what kind of academic and non-academic experiences, like what things do you look back to and say like, okay, like I enjoyed that or I didn't enjoy that?
Okay.
Do you want me
Cool.
to
Yeah,
go first?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so when I first started applying to uni, like
yeah,
most of you, I applied to both America and the UK.
yeah,
And growing up, I think I always lived maybe the American education system was for me just because it was very holistic and gave you so much diversity and flexibility in sort of, I guess, curating your own degree with, having a separate major and having a separate minor.
yeah.
But then, having applied to UCL specifically and the current program that I am doing, it's by far perhaps the most diverse degree that I could do anywhere in the UK, I think. So, officially, I do economics and business with Eastern European studies.
Yeah.
So, that
Okay.
includes disciplines like economics, business, I do sociology modules, philosophy, politics, history, pretty much everything. And
Okay.
especially this term itself, I've started corporate law and a film module as well. So for me, I think personally, choosing UCL in the UK sort of allowed me to kind of get an American degree, but in 3 years, and still
Okay.
be able to kind of curate it around the kind of interest that I typically have.
Yeah.
So for me, I feel like it's although typically UK degrees tend to be very focused on just one discipline, I was able to kind of satisfy all the other interests I usually have with the degree that I have right now.
Yeah, no,
You?
yeah, absolutely. So when I applied, I think, especially in school, you should have probably noticed, I had a lot of interest around, and I wasn't quite sure
Yeah.
what exactly I liked. It almost came down to a process of elimination when trying to figure out what I wanted to study at university, and somehow biomedical engineering made the mark because it was the most diverse. So I did economics and so on at A levels as well, but uh, I felt like that was something you can pick up on and work as you go through life any point along the way. Whereas the kind of STEM side of things, you did need a good foundational grooming to be able to pick it up later on. It's not something you can just 10 years down the line be like, oh, you know what I want to do.
Yeah.
Physics now, something like that. So that's why I first decided to kind of go into the engineering sphere of things. Biomedical engineering, it's a lot of people ask me what it is. I still don't know how to explain what exactly it is. I think it's anything that improves the quality of human life. So it's very multidisciplinary. We used to do a little bit of electrical engineering, So let's say you're thinking of, X-rays and ECG scanners and heart rate monitors and blah blah blah. A little bit of mechanical engineering if you're thinking prosthetics, bone, replacements, hip replacement, and so on. And that obviously connects to biomaterials, genetics, all of that. So I did have quite a kind of diverse first 2 years, and programming as well, obviously.
Yeah.
And by the time you get your second and third year, I think in most biomed engineering programs around the world, regardless of university, not just Imperial, you get to really pick your own modules, and it's not limited to just the sciences. So right from the start, I also did a few humanities modules, so things like languages. And in my third and fourth year, I did finance and financial management, technology entrepreneurship, where we had people coming flying in from the Silicon Valley and so on to give talks and so
Okay.
on as well. Machine learning, artificial intelligence, all of that. And interestingly, uh, in third year, you get to kind of pick your specialty, whether you want to go on a purely mechanical stream or a purely electrical stream and so on, or the general stream. And around that point in time, I also knew that I didn't see myself being in academia on the long run, so I stayed on the general stream. That way, I
Mhm.
managed to get a little bit of all of these different disciplines
Yeah.
rather than purely focusing on, say, just mechanical engineering or so on. So yeah, that was my journey through university.
Mhm.
I actually sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Curious, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was just curious. Like, so you guys spoke a lot about like the diversity that comes with like your educational experiences in the UK, right? At Imperial and at LSE. Like, is that like I'm curious, like because like I'm a big fan of the U.S. education system, because you don't have the whole like elective nonsense, right? You do whatever you want at whatever point in time as long as it completes your major, right? And your kind of prereqs, right? But no, did I freeze out? I think I froze out. Okay, no, I'm back. Uh,
For a
anyway,
second.
yeah. Anyway, so I'm just curious. Is that like so? Is that like diverse kind of selection of courses just actually just part of that degree program, or is it something you do by choice?
Um, so a bit of both, I think. So
Hmm.
the degree program obviously specifies what the library of courses almost you have
Yeah.
available to choose from. But very rarely would I say, maybe never, is that library just courses offered by that department or that
Okay.
that degree. It's usually across departments. So I think it's a misconception that a lot of people. So I thought of exactly what Ishira said as well around
Mhm.
when I was applying for university. I think it's a misconception that people think the UK is very a very strict
Stringent.
path
Mm.
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you don't have diversity to pick different courses and so on. People generally back in Sri Lanka, especially in high school, have this notion that, or
Yeah.
liberal arts colleges and all of that is just a
Yeah.
US thing. You can kind of do window shopping on courses initially and then choose exactly what you want to do and swap and da 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 da.
Yeah.
That's not really true. I think, and also that's great, but also the risk with that is the lack of kind of guardrails to make sure people don't certain kids don't spend too much time
Too
jumping
much.
ship
Yep.
and
Yeah.
not actually settling on something. So in the UK, I
Yeah.
think we have the best of both worlds there. So you have kind of safety guardrails in place to make sure, okay, you know what, you don't steer off the ship too far. And if you
Yeah.
do want to entirely overhaul your degree, there's a procedure for it. And generally, in my experience, I know friends who've changed degrees in their first 2 years and so on. The support you get is really helpful to do that. But generally, you have the diversity to pick courses from across departments, be it business stuff, finance, humanities, languages, all of that. But still stay focused onto having the same core modules as
Mhm.
part of the degree you applied for, so that you
Okay.
still finish within a 3 to 4 year time frame as well, without dragging it on for too long.
Yeah.
I like the whole guardrail analogy. I think that clears it up for me because like I'm almost done with college and I still have the same misconception that you talked about. But yeah, Manit, I think you had a question.
Oh no, no, no. I was trying to say that just kind of adding on to that. I think the Canadian system is very similar to the sense the way Namit described it. I think, and I feel like the advantage of it is that especially for like someone who wants to get into like tech or something, like you need to do like this bunch of prerequisite classes, and if you do it in your first 2 years, I think it really works well for you, like because you wouldn't know how to interview and all of that if you don't do those things and if you keep exploring. So I feel like for someone like me, for example, if I knew what kind of industry to get into, like a program like that where like I don't need to like shift around or anything, would be fine. I think it really depends on who you are, I guess, at the end. and like what your interests are.
And
Uh,
also that's
Yeah.
what
yeah,
kind of open days and sessions that a lot of universities hold in schools and so on is for now, right? To let
yeah,
people kind of get a tease into what different courses and modules might entail. It's not like a couple of decades ago where we might choose a course without actually having any idea what it entails. So
yeah.
things have changed.
And I was just curious as to like how the both of you kind of think about like in Navidu's case, how you thought about like your life after university, and Moneli's case, like what are the thoughts that you have right now, and like how is the process? Is it like daunting? Like do you do you have any direction right now, or like are you thinking of different kind of avenues as of now? Like I'm just very curious as to like that entire thought process.
um yeah, like I said, so the ground rules, almost before going into how I approach it, I guess, is a lot of people think it's very important to have a perfect kind of plan, looking
Yeah,
many years ahead of you, knowing
yeah,
exactly what you want to do and so on. I think that's very dated. I don't think that's necessary. Yes, you do have kind of short term goals that you want to achieve
goes.
and so on. That's important. You need to work towards something, but you don't need to have your entire life planned out, because
Yeah,
what that means is you won't be agile enough when it comes to unexpected changes that are thrown along
Yeah.
the way. And in terms of jobs as well, or whatever you do after university, gone are the days when people think it's a good thing to be part of one company for many years and show your
go
loyalty
with
and
that.
so on. Now, what you need is, especially when you're young, to explore as many different alternatives as possible, and try to understand, if not for what you like, at least what you don't like, so you can
Mhm.
then focus your energies on something different. So that was me during university as well. I had no idea what exactly I wanted to do, but come say second, third year, and so on, I sort of figured out, and a lot of my friends kind of convinced me as well, that while I could be in academia or be doing research and so on, that wasn't my forte. I liked working with people directly and kind of doing, taking risks, self learning new things every few months and so on,
Mhm.
and kind of taking almost a kind of a leadership role, working in different teams and so on more. And somehow consulting is something that kept coming up at university as well. It was like this, you know, one buzzword kind of dream job everyone was talking about it. No one really knew what it was at university, and I don't think a lot of people still do.
Yeah,
But somehow, when all of this doesn't matter when it comes to your final year of uni, where you start your applications, because you suddenly realize, at least in the UK, one of the most saturated graduate job markets in the world, you start your application almost a year in advance of you graduating and starting
Yep.
getting jobs. And in a market like that, although you have a rough idea of, okay, you might like doing consulting or you might like doing this kind of role, it doesn't really matter, because you've got to be strategic about where you apply to, how many
yeah,
companies you apply to, and so on.
yeah,
We can probably talk about like the challenges there later, but yeah, it was a matter of me shortlisting and then seeing what offers I got back, and thinking that consulting seemed like the perfect choice for me initially, at least, because within a few years of kickstarting my career, I get to work on different projects. So our projects, I change projects anywhere between 3 to 6 months regularly,
Mhm.
and I get an insight into how successful companies or companies that are struggling both in the private and public sector and the fintech industry as well work. uh, get a lot of experience from the ground up working directly with senior level stakeholders, because as consultants, when we are hired, we're usually hired by the C-suite, the CIOs, the CEOs, and so on, because they at the end of the day approve the spending to get in a bunch of consultants, and then we get to work with people from all of these different companies as a joint group. So the amount of information you absorb and the amount of different ways of working and so on that you assimilate within such a short span of your time, I thought was fantastic.
yeah,
Because let's say I decide to exit into industry in a few years time, which is a very common thing a lot of consultants do. I have so many kind of avenues open ahead of me. I don't need to, I can easily go into the pharmaceutical industry as much as if I wanted to go into the civil service or to I don't know, or to telecoms, because I've actually done projects in all three of those things, for
Mhm.
instance. So yeah,
It's
that's what I
interesting.
think.
Yeah. I guess like yeah, I'm one of those people who still doesn't have any idea what consultancy is, but it seems like it's a good mix of like working on this. Yeah, like it seems like it's a very like fast paced, dynamic, and changing environment really. In pretty much everything, and I think what you said kind of added to that. And you know, I've been hearing a lot of people going into it. Like I think that you might be the fourth or fifth guest that we've had has consulting aspirations. Is currently in consultancy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. And like, how was the whole like work authorization process? Like being an international student and then going there, and like, what were the mechanics of that?
If you're referring to kind of visas and all of that,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So as a student, you're on a if you're an international student, you're on a tier 4 student visa,
Mhm.
and it's a matter of, so the UK law was that you need to have a job offer in place before your student visa expires, and then you apply for your work visa within the UK. So it's an upgrade from your student visa to a work visa.
see,
So that puts a lot of constraints on a lot of students, because in your final year of uni, when you have your project or master's thesis or whatever going on, you are also simultaneously applying for jobs and so on. A lot of people initially get disheartened when they keep getting rejections and so on initially, but the point is to just keep rethinking your kind of strategy and keep going, because you don't know when you might actually get a call back for an assessment center and so on. And what's important is, some people think, oh, you know what, maybe I should apply to smaller places, smaller companies and so on, since the competition might be low. The problem with that is, to get a work visa, a graduate work visa, the companies need to be big enough to be able to afford sponsoring your visa.
Yeah,
They use a lot of work visa sponsors generally pay a big fee annually to the Home Office
yep,
to have sponsor status. So whether you like it or not, usually you need to apply to pretty big companies who can afford that, and who
yeah,
also want all of this international talent,
hmm,
all of this diversity and so on. So yeah, it's not easy. It's everyone gets kind of disheartened along the way, trying to figure out what they might be doing wrong. uh,
yeah,
but yeah, generally that's the process. You need a sponsor, and usually most of these companies, like I said, companies who actually do need international talent and can sponsor visas, usually have their in-house teams to help with the administrative
hmm,
side of things, getting your application
hmm.
across, sorting out your right to work and all that. So you don't, as a student, have too much to worry about on that side. You just coordinate with the firm that you decide to join eventually, and they help you out through it. That's anything you want to add? Anything I'm missing?
I don't think so. I think you covered it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, from that
yeah.
standpoint.
I'm just curious on like when you listen, like are you planning to like move into like a master's program, or like are you still like debating those options? Like I was just thinking, just want to know what your thought was.
Yeah, I think I'm in like in very experimental phase where I am,
Okay,
open to both a master's and a potential job.
okay,
But I think, having said that, I've genuinely always enjoyed the learning process, be it at school or at uni.
yeah,
So, given the current situation with things, and masters potentially being in a online digital environment, I am also leaning towards perhaps more work experience and internships and potential work experience at the
yeah,
moment.
yeah,
Purely because I think, looking back at my 2 years at university, as enjoyable as the academic learning experience was, I thoroughly really enjoyed the social aspect of really meeting people alongside learning. And now, looking back, looking at my digital term this year, I felt like I really
yeah,
wasn't able to make friends,
yeah,
so I think
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
tends to be like such a big part of a master's, especially because that's really where you sort of network and meet people. um, but just because this year has obviously been very unpredictable, I am very much open to both, and in the process of applying for multiple internships and master's programs. Yeah, just keeping my head open for both avenues at the moment.
gotcha. That makes sense.
I think I'm very much in the same place now because like I
Yeah.
have the option of doing like a co-terminal masters, at my school, and or like like starting to feel job offers and things like that. And
Yeah.
it's like it's a weird time because with COVID, it plays such a big part in these decisions. And like sure the vaccine's up, but we don't know what the time frame for
Yeah.
that, like like herd immunity is going to be. So it is interesting, and I think like personal circumstances play a lot into that a lot. And like what is it that like can you like afford to tread water in a positive way, while you're figuring everything out, while you want to figure out the industry. Like, so like in my case, like I don't know where I want to work. Like it's been
Mhm.
because like I thought I was going into like academia and physics, right? And in my second year, I was like, it's not real for me. I like learning physics, but learning physics and doing physics are two different things. So yeah, I ended up not wanting to do that. So that now I'm kind of like I picked up like this whole like CS part of my kind of resume, right? And I'm trying to like find ways to merge physics, CS, and kind of a love for conservation biology, but there's nothing out there that actually like combines the three, right? So it is interesting, but like yeah, like 100%. Like I feel like I can relate to what you're saying there.
Yeah, I remember actually there were certain points in time where Money would like see us working or whatever and be like, you know what? I think I'm just gonna keep learning for the rest of my life. Yeah, and the thing is, I told her, right, it's great that you want to keep studying and so on, but there is also a limit to the point where you only do it until you realize you're actually getting a return out of it. And just
Mhm.
Yeah.
because you're going to working or going into doing your own business or whatever, the learning doesn't necessarily have to stop. It doesn't have to be formalized education. Right? There's a limit
Yeah,
to how much.
exactly.
Yeah.
At a point, it stops being useful that you just keep doing formalized, learning throughout and throughout your life. And just because you go into something else doesn't mean that you stop learning. Like I'm sure, Ishira, like a lot of the companies you were looking at, a lot of internships that you and Manit both have done as well, and in my case as well. These companies, especially the companies that are big enough to afford and want to get in international talent, uh, invest a lot on learning and development and actually
Yeah.
Yep.
encourage you to keep on doing courses, getting certified, and so on.
Mhm.
Isn't
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
it's the case with like I know a few people from like Facebook and Google who've been sponsored by their companies to come and do their PhDs at Stanford, right? Mostly in
it?
like AI and things like that. And like honestly, like yeah, like I completely agree with like the whole like it doesn't have to be formal education. Like you can keep learning outside the classroom, and like it's showing because a lot of these companies have like they've really dumped their like college degree requirements, and they're like if you're a self taught
Yeah.
coder, they'll welcome you with open arms now, right?
Yeah.
It's Silicon Valley, so like yeah, I think that's interesting.
I think over in Canada also it's moving in that direction in the sense that like they don't really like now they don't even like look at your grades or anything either. They don't like 'cause there are some companies that didn't even ask me, like these are like known companies that didn't even ask me for the transcript. So like that's interesting to me, what the trend is like. And I think yeah, I agree on this point in the sense that like I feel like I've learned more through internships than like through school in general. Like yeah. And right now I'm just trying my best to like get out of formalized education as much as I can because I feel like
Yeah.
okay, like I'm done, like it's enough, like I'm the jobs like
I'm going to do podcasts and so on.
yeah, this is yeah exactly.
Uh,
So yeah, I feel like I'm like done. I'm trying to like move out, like I just have to finish like the yearly requirements, but like I know I'm going to go into industry, but like, I feel like that's where
I
I
think,
am.
yeah. And especially with, like online learning, you feel like you are just sticking to like that academic,
Yeah.
meeting your deadlines,
Hmm.
doing your lectures, because you really don't have that social aspect of uni anyway.
Yeah, not
So
at
it's
all.
so easy
Yeah.
to feel that way. Yeah.
Actually, I just
Yeah.
remembered when Manit said that they didn't ask for my grades and so on. I don't think Deloitte even asked me for my CV because they want to remove off the bias associated with
Okay.
how the CV physically looks. Because when you present a CV, different
Okay.
people might
yeah.
have liking towards certain individual items in a CV and so on. And
Yeah.
you can't expect graduates applying for their first proper break, in their career to have like the most beautiful CV full of experience, right? I think a lot
Yeah.
of these big companies are now starting to understand, right? What we need to focus on is more how these kids approach work and
Yeah.
kind of transferable soft skills and so on, rather than what's in a glorified CV. So this
Yeah.
kind of touches base on the conversation we had earlier as well around how do you choose what you want to do and so on.
Yeah.
Even if you don't go into say consulting, even if you go into uh, any particular specific industry, it doesn't matter because in the first few kind of years of your career, all companies should ideally at least start caring about is what did the person get out of the experience, regardless of whether it was in, I don't know, e-commerce or coding or shipping or
Yeah.
pharmaceuticals or whatever. It's more the underlying skills you picked up.
Anyway, I just want to thank you guys for coming on the show and agreeing to do this. And yeah, it's been a fun time for us, and I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Thank you so much, guys. We
Thanks
had
for
a really good
having
Yeah,
time.
us.
Yeah, thank you so much for
yeah,
inviting
yeah. I
me.
think we covered some interesting topics, and I think there's like a lot of good content we can pull from this one. It's been a longer episode, but we can chop that up, and that'll be fine.
For sure, yeah.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Making the Right Play. You can find our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, Content. This will keep you posted on new episodes, bonus content, and blooper reels. We hope you make the right play.